Hello, everybody. Welcome to Currently Inked number 13 for September 15th, 2016, also known as the day Matt needs to actually do his taxes since he filed an extension on April 15th and still hasn't done them. You'll notice the format's a little bit different today. That is because I'm happy to welcome back David from Fig Boot on Pen. So David, welcome back to Currently Inked. Nice to have you.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
So we've got some fun stuff today. Going to answer some of your questions as I usually do here. Quick thing before we go on. Today's episode is brought to you by penworld.be. So if you are in Europe, check out penworld.be. They've got a huge selection of pens, great customer service, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later on. So David, what's been new and exciting with you? We haven't talked since, I guess, DC, right?
Yeah, we met up at DC, and that I had a really good time at that show. It was something very special, and it was the first time I had been to that show, and it really makes me look forward to next year and really counting the days until to next year. Because as I had heard, it isn't just, you don't just there to go there to see pens. It was really a social gathering. And it was really nice to be able to meet a lot of people that you had communicated with, and then meet people that you hadn't met previously. And so I really enjoyed the social aspect of it, even more than the actual merchandise aspect of it.
Now, this wasn't your first pen show, right?
No, I've been to the Triangle Pen Show. I live in the Raleigh-Durham area, and there's a pen show here in the Triangle that's maybe almost like 3 or 4 weeks before DC. It's not too far before it.
Mm-hmm. So what is then, how would you compare the two shows? I mean, I know DC's larger, obviously, but aside from that,
yeah.
What are the similarities and differences you experienced?
I think it was just the amount of obviously a larger size, but you have a lot of merchants that will only come to DC as opposed to going to some of the regional shows. There's some that go to every regional show or virtually every regional show. But it was nice to see those the companies that were just making their debut, to where they were just coming out with something brand new. There were some ink companies there and some pen companies there that were brand new, and it was nice to see something that you hadn't seen before and meet some people.
I happened to spy a box from one of those new companies sitting on the shelf behind you. I'll just
yeah, maybe we might see that in a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, very cool. Well, let's start off with a question. So this one is from Fontaine 675, who is located in Greece, and he or she asks, what are your top 3 materials for fountain pen bodies and why? And then part 2 of that question is, which fountain pen gives you the best fountain pen writing experience as it comes to the feeling of the nib? So what do you like your pens to be made of, generally speaking?
You know what? Lately, I've really liked some of the ebonite pens that I've received. I have a couple that I have purchased recently that I just really like the feel of, and they all have their own personality.
Mm-hmm.
There is, I guess we'll call more of the smelly ebonite that just has more of an odor to it, and then a couple other ones I have no odor to them whatsoever. But there's a certain amount of warmth to them, and a little more personality. And so lately, I've really been into a couple of the ebonite pens that I had. And, I'd have to say, in regard to the second part of that question, in regard to what pen gives me the best feeling, I'd say probably my favorite nib on any of my pens is the nib that's on my Sailor King of Pen. And that the one I have on my ebonite King of Pen is, even though the LB5s use the same nib and the same section, it just feels a little bit different. Every nib has kind of its own personality, and I just like that one just slightly more. And I really like the Sailor nibs, but that one in particular just really gives me a joy writing with. But there's another one that I'll show you when we do some show and tell that is giving that one a run for its money.
Okay. I apologize, by the way. I've got a fly about the size of a hummingbird that's circling around all these lights right now. So if you see a gigantic fly in front of my face, or I go like this all of a sudden, that's probably why. In terms of materials, I like ebonite pens a lot, but I find myself drawn to the plastics a lot more. The celluloid I like, and even just regular acrylics and resins. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I like bright, shiny colorful pens full of motion. You know, a lot of ebonites have some pretty highly figured, but usually it's just two colors. It's black and something else.
Yeah.
You know, you might find like Waterman had this red and yellow ripple ebonite back in the day that they called rose ripple ebonite. That's very rare to find. They have a yellow and blue ripple ebonite. And you can find some of those, but for me, I like the stuff with the chatoyance and the motion in the material. So that's generally what I go toward. Plus, as much as I like ebonite, I just really think that a lot of the modern plastics tend to be a little bit more robust. They feel more robust, and maybe it's the way the pens are made these days. I don't know, but they just don't feel the same as ebonite. So.
Yeah, like you said, you can get with some of the plastics, you know, an infinite amount of variance in regard to colors and then even different patterns and things like that. So yeah. I know what you're talking about. There's just more variance in there.
It's a visual thing more than a feel thing for me. I generally tend to lean toward the plastic and ebonite pens more than metal pens. But that's a personal preference. As for which gives you the best fountain pen writing experience, that is kind of an impossible question to answer because every pen has such a different, unique experience. And I find myself more reaching towards certain pens for certain types of writing that I'm going to do. And I suppose this would be as good a time as any to show a pen, but I showed this before, but I finally inked up my Aurora Optima in the green, the emerald green color.
Very nice.
Speaking of plastics, this is it's called Oraloid. I think it's cellulose acetate as opposed to cellulose nitrate, something like that. So it's kind of celluloid-y, but not the proper celluloid. And these are kind of among my favorites for just everyday writing things. You know, I love the Sailor King of Pen, but there's something kind of so special about that. I don't want to overdo using it because I don't want it to become commonplace. If that makes
I understand what you're talking about.
There's sense at all.
Yeah, there's the pens that I have sitting on my desk for if I just want to jot a note that I like to use. But those are different than the ones I might take to work or use for a note or a letter or things like that. They all have their own purpose.
Yeah. The interesting thing with this is, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it on this camera. So I like really, really smooth nibs. Aurora's nibs tend to be a little bit feedback heavy. And so I pulled the nib out earlier today when I inked the pen up to get it to just adjust the nib a little bit, increase the ink flow just a tiny bit. And when I tried to reset the nib, I didn't get the nib in all the way. But interestingly enough, the fact that the nib is just, maybe 2 millimeters further out than it was before, it has completely changed the writing characteristic of the pen, and it has made it even better. Usually these nibs are pretty rigid, and having it just a couple centimeters out or millimeters, not centimeters, out from the section added this insane bounce to the nib that is not there on my other one. So I just did it like 45 minutes ago, but I'm going to play around with this one a little bit. And then while we're at it, let me pull up the ink I've got it inked with. So actually, I'll do this because inking the pen also accomplished one of my longtime fountain pen goals.
Uh-oh. No, there's still a little in there.
That's not enough to ink a pen with. That's just enough to fill with water and know what color it used to be. This is one of the first bottles of ink I ever bought. It is the first bottle of ink in 4 years I have emptied. So Iroshizuku Kujaku, congratulations, you are now the winner of the only bottle of ink Matt has ever emptied by writing with it. So
well, congratulations. Yeah. And then I don't even want to ask about that caveat and how many ended up on the floor.
So that's the writing sample right there.
Nice.
There. So anyway, so what about you? What do you got inked right now?
Okay. The pen that I'm most excited about right now, let's put it this way, that I use all of my pens. I take them to work. I use them all the time, and I wouldn't allow this one to leave the house until I got a pen wrap for it. All the other ones, I'll usually, for the most part, have clips, but I had to get a pen wrap for this one. And I really like this Takia pen wrap. And what it is the Danny Trio Tama Nuri on Shu on Genkai, which is a mouthful, but I just really love this pen. First of all, I think it can be used as a baseball bat. It is a weapon in itself. It's enormous. It's almost 7 inches long, but it's usable. It doesn't feel like a club in your hand. It is very, very comfortable. And again, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it in here, but the nib is just spectacular.
Danny Trios have some of the most beautiful nibs on them.
And I really like the Hiroshi lacquer work on here. It's just really subtle. You know, it's one of those things, like if I showed this pen to someone at work, they're just going to say, it just looks like a pen. They're not quite going to have that appreciation for it because it doesn't necessarily look spectacular unless you kind of understand what it is and the process that goes into it. And that, you know, there's a little artist mark down here, and that's because this dude right here, I forgot his name, but I saw on the website, you know, he spent 3 months making this pen, and there's just a certain amount of craftsmanship and care that goes into it that just makes this very, very special. And with it, I have a special ink. I picked up some Bungbox Piano Mahogany.
Currently, my absolute favorite
ink.
It is absolutely my favorite ink right now.
I really like it. It is. For some reason lately, I've been into a lot of browns and trying a lot of browns out. And it's one of those things where certain pens, you got to have certain colors of ink. It wouldn't look good to have, it just looks better to have a brown ink coming out of this pen than a blue or something along those lines. So I'm really enjoying this pen a lot. And this one is a lot of fun to use, and it's just very, very special. I'm really enjoying it.
Did you pick that up in DC?
No, I didn't. I purchased this one from Chatterley.
Oh,
and
nice.
I will say that normally I'm not a sucker for email advertisements, but they had a special on them, and I saw it, and it was one of those things to where as soon as I saw it, I just went, I have to have that. So Brent suckered me into one with one of his email campaigns.
I made a very conscious decision not to open any of the emails from Chatterley Luxuries from the moment I got laid off until I start my new job on Monday. And so when any emails I get after Monday, it's okay for me to open them again, but until then, no allowed.
That's pretty smart, because every once in a while he has a spectacular pen at a very good price to where you think to yourself, how can I pass this up? I need, you know, I'm never going to find this pen at a better price, and plus he's really good to do business with.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this is the time to pull the trigger, because I know it's the best time I'm ever gonna get.
Yeah. All right, let's grab another question. This one is from James in Kingsport, Tennessee. And James asks, discuss how the same ink used with different nibs can look very different and how that influences at all your ink choices. So I'll do you a little sneak peek because I'm working on the full-blown review, but I think this is probably as good an indicator as any. So this is KWZ Honey that Van Ness Pens gave me for review. And you've got fine, medium, broad, 1.5 millimeter stub flex, and a Pilot Parallels 3.8 millimeter. So if you look at the color of the fine versus the color of the broad, it's almost a completely different ink. So generally speaking, with really fine nibs, I tend personally to go with very lubricated inks and very dark inks. Inks that aren't going to give me a lot of shading, because I find that finer lines and drier lines tend to make the ink lighter than it, I say lighter than it actually is. That's a little bit of a misnomer, but they tend to make the ink feel lighter than it should. Now, I'm a medium guy. I use wet mediums most of the time. So if I've got a really wet medium, then I will put lighter inks in there, or I'm okay using an ink that maybe doesn't have quite as good an ink flow, isn't quite as lubricated, because the line is wide enough for me to get some variation. So any any experiences in that world?
Yeah, I'm doing actually this weekend. I'm going to be coming out with a review of the Nemesine Singularity, and I actually have 4 of them that I'm going to be reviewing, and I have an extra
you
fine,
and I
a
need to
fine.
probably start coordinating our review schedules.
So I have like an extra fine, a fine, a medium, and a 0.6. And so that I was going to be able to show kind of comparisons of those, and when I was playing around, that you could really tell the difference between the 0.6 and the fine, and that the ink that I was using really does look different. It comes out much lighter, similar to what you had with your KWZ. That it just comes out like much more of a lighter color than it does coming out on the 0.6, which comes out very much more darker.
Now, what kind of nibs do you normally use for your day-to-day writing?
My day-to-day is I typically write with medium nibs.
Okay.
That on some of the larger pens, like some of the Pelikan M1000s and the Montblanc 149s, then you go with fines on those because those are pretty much mediums.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I stick with mediums. I don't usually do a lot of specialty nibs. I have started to experiment with those more, just to make, so that every week I'm not coming out with a review of a medium nibbed pen, that I can vary it up a little bit. For example, the Nemesine 0.6, I really enjoyed that. It has a really nice feel to it, and it's stubbish without being too stubbish, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like the 0.6 and 0.8s from them. I had a 0.8 once upon a time, and it was a good pen. Okay, why don't you grab the next inked pen for us there?
Since you mentioned the box earlier, I'll go over this. I know that the Canaan company was one that we both saw in DC, and that launched their product, and that I think you've mentioned it on your channel previously and shown it, but all of their pens are related to nature and Hawaii, and they kind of base their pens off of pictures. So this is the picture that this pen is based off of. And it's called the Nui Nalu. So it's supposed to be a wave. And this is the pen. And I think they did a very good job in capturing the look of a wave on this pen. I wanted to make it, when I was looking at their pens, they had some very awesome designs. And when I was taking a look at it, I wanted to make sure it was something that kind of related to me personally as well. I'm originally from Southern California, and spent a lot of time at the beach and surfing and things like that. So waves kind of meant more to me than a sunset or the beach and the sand and some of those other pens. Even those look very, very nice. But I do like this pen. It writes very well, and plus I think it looks pretty cool on top of that. And the ink that I have in here was an ink that I picked up in DC from the Kobe company. And all of their inks are based off of nature elements around Kobe, Japan. And this is number 17. Number 17 is a blue like this. Kind of almost looks like a Konpeki type blue with a bit of sheen to it. It comes in the standard sailor bottles that we all hate. But it's a very interesting ink, and now I need to do the research and find out what number 17 represents, what area of Kobe it represents. Did you pick any of those up while you were there?
I got the Kahakai, I think is what it's called. So it's the one where it's the sand going into the lighter turquoise water into the darker blue turquoise water. It's gorgeous. It's one of the most eye-catching pens I've ever seen. A lot of people have complained it's just a really expensive Yovo nib holder. And whatever, I love it. Regardless of what it is, I love it. And for me, but the thing I found interesting on mine, I should probably change the picture so people can see me talking. The thing I found interesting on mine is it's a standard steel Yovo nib, but it is the best Yovo nib I've ever used. So I don't know what Hugh Scher, the gentleman who owns the company with his wife and son, I don't know what he did to that nib, but it is just liquid smooth. It's insane.
I agree with you. It is amazing. and I love it. The only thing I don't like about the nib, and when I do my review, I'll kind of show it again, is that there's really no design on the nib other than the scroll work. And there's a kind of a blank area here that you kind of wish that they would actually put their logo or something along those lines on there. That's the only complaint I have on the nib. But as far as writing goes, I agree with you that it's a fantastic Yovo nib and writes amazing.
All right, so my pen is this little itty bitty one here. This is the Delta Vintage. So I got this well over a year ago. I've been meaning to do a review of it for a long time. I just haven't gotten around to it. So I'm working on the review now. It's got a number 6 nib, which is unusual for a pen as small as this one is. It's a pretty, I mean, it's a small little pen. I don't know how well you can see that, but and it's so small it can't use long cartridges or converters. So you have to either get a mini cartridge or a mini converter, or you can eyedropper it. I don't want to go too much into depth because I'm going to save that for the review. I love this material, though. Speaking of plastics with some motion and you know, shimmer in them, this is just a beautiful green material, and I'm such a sucker for green pens anyway. And then I've got that one inked up with this Robert Oster dark chocolate. So it's kind of a purple brown. It's not a full brown. It's not a full purple. It's like a brown with purple undertones. It's really interesting. I don't have any other colors quite like that. And so I've just started playing around with it. I'm becoming a real big fan of these Robert Oster inks so far. I've got 10 bottles of them, so I've only tried 3 of them so far, but I like what I've tried. So that's what I got right now.
I have one, and I can't remember. It's one of the blues. I do like it very much. It's a very nice blue.
Yeah, they come in these little plastic bottles. I'm not thrilled about the whole plastic thing. I mean, this bottle's not going to win any design awards, but you know, it is what it is.
It's nice when it's full. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be like when you've used a bunch of it and you have to get down to the bottom. I guess at that point you just have to syringe it out or something along those lines.
I will say that chances are I'll be able to fill from this bottle a whole lot longer than I will from like this bottle.
Oh.
You know, or one of the J or band bottles. So
yes,
it's, you know, toward the end of any bottle, you end up having to syringe the ink out, is in my experience. But I like the fact that it's narrow and tall.
Yeah, I would much rather prefer narrow and tall than short and fat, like the ST DuPont bottles or something like that. Very short.
Bottle. Yeah.
Yeah, or even the Sailor ones.
Yeah.
But,
all right. Well, let's quick interstitial here. So I mentioned earlier that the sponsor for today's episode of Currently Inked is penworld.be. Penworld's been a sponsor of the Pen Habit for a while. Really appreciate their sponsorship. If you are in Europe and looking for a great place to buy a pen, penworld.be is a great place. But I know the great majority of my viewers are from the US, and so one thing to keep in mind is for a lot of European brands, buying directly from Europe can actually be a really smart way to save some money. You may or may not be aware of this, but if you if you buy something, if you're in the United States and you buy something from Europe, you automatically get a 20% discount because most prices have the VAT tax, the value-added tax, added into the price there. And we don't have to pay that. So when you put it in your cart and show that you're shipping to the US, they take 20% off. Plus, you can look at what the exchange rates are doing and sometimes find some really, really good deals. So if you're in the US and you're looking for some good deals on some of those European brands, don't hesitate to look over to some of those European sellers, including penworld.be. They've been like I said, they've been a great support. They've got a huge selection and some really great pens. So really do want to thank them for supporting the Pen Habit. Okay. Let me just find another question here. This is a good one. Evil laugh. This is from Christian in Germany. And Christian asks, how many of your pens did you find to write well right out of the box? Did you buy your pens expecting to do some nib work on them? So David, why don't you tackle that first?
You know, I will say that I don't have tons of practice doing the nib work. And the times I have not been the most successful. I've tweaked a couple of nibs to the point where I needed to have a professional work on them. And so for the most part, I expect that the nibs are going to work well right out of the box. And that's my expectation, is that they work well out of the box. But then that's not always the case. That there are some times that you need to tweak it. Maybe it writes a little bit on the dry side and you prefer something a little bit more wet. But it's almost like one of those things to where the more expensive the pen, the less you hope that you have to tweak with it once you get it. I have one right now that is a pen that I really, really like, but it really needs some work. I've had one person work on it and I need to have a second person because it's just not quite right yet. But I think that for the most part, when you buy a pen, it should work. But there are going to be some times where you really need to get in there and either do some work yourself or have someone else do the work in order to make it match your personal tastes.
Mm-hmm. So I have started doing a lot of work on my nibs, even some of my expensive pens. There's certain things I won't do. I won't grind my nibs, period. If the nib is damaged, I generally won't work on it. But if it's adjusting ink flow, smoothing the nib, aligning the tines, I feel pretty comfortable doing that work. And I've been doing it for a couple of years now, including on some pretty expensive pens. So I would love to say that most pens should just write properly out of the box. But I think there's a problem with that mentality, which is that there's really no good definition for writing properly. It's so different for everybody. And back in the day when you used to be able to walk into a store and try a few different pens and then have the guy or the lady behind the counter adjust the nib to your taste before you walked out the door, obviously, that's one of both the challenges and the benefits of a fountain pen is the adjustability. So I would say probably about a third of my pens I get out of the box and I don't touch them. Of the other two-thirds, the remaining two-thirds, probably 90%, I will do a little bit of work. Usually it's smoothing work. Usually the tines are in adjustment, or if they're not, they're just barely out of adjustment. So I'll, just tweak the tines a little bit and then smooth it on some mesh.
That's easy to do.
That remaining 10% of the last two-thirds are either pens that are so rare, so expensive, or so tricky. And I'm talking like vintage flex nibs or out of production Omas nibs or a Tebaldi Impero that I bought that it's out of production. I'm never going to find a replacement nib for it. So those I will usually take to a professional. And my professional of choice is Mike Masayama. He's worked on most of my pens, but I've had some really expensive pens. My Pelikan M1000 was garbage. It's frankly still garbage, even after having had someone work on it. So it's, some pens just don't write well, and some pens don't write well for all people. And what I find is a lot of the expensive pens, they tend to overdo whatever adjustments they're doing, so that they end up causing more problems. It's like the number of people where, oh yeah, the nib's super smooth, but it hard starts and skips all the time. Well, they over polished it. And so, I feel like there aren't as many people in the factories who know how to do this really, really quality nib adjustment work before they send them out. Either that or the company just doesn't care anymore. So, I mean, I probably get myself in trouble for that, but the number of pens that I have had to adjust in the several $100 range is kind of shameful. And it's not even it's not even adjusting it for my own preferences. It's adjusting it to make it just work.
Yeah, I will say that a high amount of pens you get, and they are out of alignment at times, and that's an easy adjustment to make. But you would think that that's kind of the first thing you check coming out of the factory is, are the tines aligned? You can almost understand some of the ink flow and things like that you might not be able to test out until you're actually fully, other doing something else besides dipping the pen. But just getting the nib in alignment, you'd think that would be kind of rather easy or basic to do.
Yeah. All right. Why don't you tackle the next inked pen for us?
Sure. I really like a lot of Viscontis, and I was able to pick up a new one, and this is called the Millionaire. And what's special about the Millionaire is that it is made out of Italian marble. And it's a real nice green. They come in other colors as well, but this is just a very nice green. And even though it is made out of marble, it really isn't overly heavy. Now, actually, the cap is heavier than the rest of the pen is, so it's not something that you're going to post. But of all of my Viscontis, this one might have come with the best nib. It's just the Dream Touch nib, but just right out of the box, it's very juicy, very smooth, and had no issues with it whatsoever. And one of the interesting things about this pen is that it comes with this, which you unscrew this, and it comes with a rollerball adapter as well. And what's also nice is that, okay, you want to change this to a rollerball. I don't know why you would, but you can. You can. And the filling system here is a plunger that you pull out. Mm-hmm. And at first I was concerned about putting this into my little storage case, but they've designed it so you could put it in there with the plunger extended and ink in here, and it's not going to depress or expel any of the ink.
Nice.
But I will say it's a very nice rollerball. Other than when I do my review, that's probably the last time the rollerball will ever be attached to it. But I am enjoying this pen, and like I said, the nib is just very, very nice. And the ink I have in here is, I bought a couple of inks from Japan, and they were brands I were not familiar of. Maybe you were. This one was Kira Iru. And that this is a blue purple, and it comes in a little box like this, and the bottle looks, actually no, I'm sorry, the bottle is this one. It's just a little bottle like this. And it's a very nice kind of blue purple, and that I like very much, and so far I'm very happy with it, and I kind of like the fact that it's an ink I've never heard of before, and so far it's very, very nice. But I'm enjoying my Millionaire and enjoying that Kira Iru
very nice
ink as well.
Yeah. All right. So my next currently inked pen is the Franklin Christoph Model 66. This is the I forget.
Is that a Coke bottle or?
Yeah, this one is the antique glass finish, also colloquially known as the Coke bottle finish, but obviously they can't call it that because trademark. I got it in LA in February, and I've been sitting on it all this time, working on the review of it right now. I have it inked with another probably my favorite Franklin Christoph ink, the Terra Firma. So if
I really like that ink a lot. That's one of my favorite browns, a brownish red. That's really nice.
If you're looking for a in-production alternative to the limited edition or special edition ink from Mont Blanc, the Leonardo da Vinci red chalk, this is the closest I have found to that ink. It's not quite the same. It's a little more orange, or a little more red, excuse me. The da Vinci red chalk is a little bit more orangey, but they're very, very similar in a pen. The swatches don't look the same, but in a pen, it's almost impossible to tell the two apart. So I will say, I won't do a full review here. I do have a little problem with the edge of the cap. There's little crack-a-lure from the manufacturing process, I suspect. And I had a leak on the plane and got purple ink in there, and it won't come out. So
yeah, it looks a little purple.
It's stuck that way. So at some point I may have to see if it's possible to get an extra cap or a different cap from Franklin Christoph. I know that may not be possible, and it's fine. This is not, in my mind, the same kind of pen as, an $800 Omas or a $1,200 classic pens or anything like that. This is going to be more of a daily writer type pen. So it doesn't need to be visually pristine for me.
Yeah, and well, at least that purple is at least complements and looks well with it. It's not like it's a green or a, orange or something
Yeah.
like that. That at least it almost looks like a little bit of the bluish that's in there, anyways. And so
I did get I got this cleaning solution called Rapidoease or Rapidoease or something like that from Independence recently, and they use it at pen shows when they're doing repairs, and so they sell these little glasses that you can fill it like that far up, these little, it's like super tall shot glass,
yeah,
and then put that inside your ultrasonic cleaner. So I think I may fill the little shot glass with Rapidoease, soak this in there and run it through the ultrasonic cleaner a few times, see if that does it. If not, I'll probably reach out to Franklin Christoph and just ask them about the possibility of getting a replacement cap. So
I picked up some of Independence, the little zap, the ink zap for your hands from them, and that actually works really well as well for cleaning your hands.
There's when I was in San Francisco at the San Francisco Pen Show, Mike Masayama had these little tubes of something called Cresto, Kresto. I've got some of the ink zap and I've used it and it works pretty well. This Cresto stuff is made specifically for dyes and inks. I think it's probably used like in the printing industry. This stuff is just miraculous. Apparently, it'll even get ink out of clothing and things like that. It's still got that, that pumice grit to it.
Yeah.
But there's some chemical in there that just basically dissolves the ink right off your hands. So
nice. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. All right. I think we got time for one more question. This is a pretty good one. This is from Chris in New York City. And Chris asks, I love nibs like the Omas Extra Fine Extra Flexibile, the Pilot Flexible nib on the Custom Heritage. That's probably the Pilot FA nib, and similar nibs. Have you tried the Bach titanium nibs, like the ones found on the Tactile Turn Gist, for example? And if so, have you found it to be similarly flexible? So have you tried any of the titanium nibs?
No, I haven't. I don't have any of the titanium nibs from Tactile Turn or anybody else, but have you used those?
I have. I've used a few. So as far as I know, Bach is the only company making titanium nibs right now. So I got a titanium nib on my Stipula Model T. I reviewed it back in season 2, I think. It was a train wreck. It was an absolute train wreck of a nib. I probably put 3 hours worth of work in on this nib and finally got it writing really, really nicely. Titanium's very hard to adjust because it doesn't want to stay where you put it. It's got a lot of metal memory almost, and it just goes back to the way it was. So, and from what I've heard from other nib meisters and the like, titanium's really hard to adjust. So now that was the Stipula nib. I've tried the Bach branded Titan nib on a few different pens. So I've tried it on a Karas Customs pen. I've tried it on a Jonathan Brooks Carolina Pens Company pen, pen company pen, and I have tried it on the Tactile Turn Gist. So the one that I got from Jonathan Brooks was wonderful, but he told me that he had to work on that nib quite a bit to get it to write well. Both the ones on the Karas Customs and the Tactile Turn were also really nice and came that way. So I don't know what the deal was with that one Stipula nib. Maybe it was, maybe it was just a fluke. They are very soft, but they are very spongy in the way they are soft. So this nib will pour ink out. They're wet nibs, really, really wet nibs. They're going to pour ink out. But if you try to flex them the way you flex an Extra Flexibile or a Custom Heritage pen with an FA nib, I think you're going to be pretty heavily disappointed. My experience has also been that the nib tips are broader. So you don't get that real fine starting line that
Yeah.
you get with flexible nibs that, you know, most of mine have written just regularly like a medium, regardless of what the tip said it was. It wrote kind of like a medium. And then I could get it up to a little bit over a broad without it starting to railroad. So if you like a really bouncy nib, this reminds me a lot more of the Dream Touch Visconti Palladium nibs than the really springy gold nibs like the Extra Flexibile from Omas. So if that helps at all.
Cool.
All righty. So what do you got coming up in the next couple of weeks, David? Anything fun for us to look forward to?
Well, through the generosity of a number of retailers, over the next probably 2 months, I'm very giveaway heavy on my reviews, and so I have a number of giveaways coming up over the next month and a half where I have reviews where I have some giveaways. Like I had mentioned before, actually coming out this weekend, I have the Nemesine Singularity, and then a number of other things coming up as well. But that's what's coming up this week. How about yourself?
Do you have any giveaways going on right now that we can point people to?
No, I actually had one last weekend that ended last night. So that was the end of that one, and that one was for the Sailor My First pen set, which kind of has the clear candy with a medium fine nib and a Fude nib.
Oh, nice.
That it's kind of a neat way to check out a Fude nib without having to pay a lot of money, at least to play around with it to get an idea. But that was the most recent one.
So in terms of giveaways, if you haven't heard, I will happily say I am running the mother of all giveaways right now. I win the giveaway award thanks to Kenro Industries. I am giving away an Aurora Optima. You get to pick the color. You get to pick the nib. It is a $600 pen. It is one, if you'll excuse the language, one hell of a giveaway.
Yeah, so, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So huge thanks to Kenro Industries for letting me do that. That's going on, I think, until the 24th. But I too am real giveaway heavy this season. My season's, so we're recording on Wednesday night. This will go live on Thursday. The first video of season 4 will come out on Friday, and it'll just be a welcome video, and then the first review will be out on Saturday. So the first review comes out, and I'm trying to decide whether or not I should give any. Now, I'm not going to give any teasers to what it's going to be. I'm just going to be mean like that. But after that, I'll be doing minimum of 2 videos a week, 1 currently inked, and at least 1 review, sometimes 2 reviews. I've basically got my review videos recorded through most of November right now. So I'm now working on my December reviews and giveaways and things like that. So find me on all the regular places: facebook.com/penhabit, twitter.com/penhabit, instagram.com/penhabit, and of course YouTube, where you can just search for Penhabit and find me there. But since you're probably watching this from YouTube, you probably don't need to do that. Where does everyone find you, David?
You can just search for Figboot on Pens. And that's figbootonpens@gmail.com for an email address, and then just look on YouTube for Figboot on Pens, and you will be able to find me.
Awesome. Well, it's been great having you here. Again, a huge thank you to penworld.be for sponsoring this episode of Currently Inked. Do appreciate it. Please head over there and make sure that if you order from them, as I always say, thank them for their support of the Pen Habit. It means a lot to me, and it's helpful for them to know that that their marketing dollars are being spent well. So thank you so much for watching, and thanks for joining me, David. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it as well.
And we will see you here next time on the Pen Habit. Bye.